Oh man, this is gonna be contentious. Contentious, I tell you. Dynamic events need to go until 1.0. First off, that's not realistic, okay? I mean, like, we only have one system, and Cloud Imperium wants to create something for people. And this is that argument that we talked about last night, that River Grid video about PvPers and PvEers, and I'm talking about how game design takes care of this, right? And we really have to wait till we get an additional system to see this operate fully, and the balance between PvPers and PvEers can be there, because every successful MMO needs both PvPers and PvEers. And unfortunately, because we only have one system and are in this alpha state, with these dynamic events, they do bring about a lot of fights between PvPers and PvEers. And that is normal, because the game design does not allow larger boundaries. We are all stuck in one sandbox right now, and therefore this is what's happening. So let's see what TenPoundFortyTwo has to say about dynamic events needing to go until 1.0. I completely disagree with this.
This Zenith threat has been a bit of a mess. Performance issues, bugs, the mission getting stuck.
Yes, it's a mess. It's an absolute chaotic mess. It's because we are in one sandbox.
UI problems, friendly fire. I've personally had a pretty awful experience with this. And honestly, if you think about it from a new player's point of view, it's a bit of a disgrace. Are dynamic events really worth all the effort at this stage of development?
No, they're put there because Cloud Imperium feels the need to put it there to give people content, right? But that content's causing a huge controversy, right? We talked about ways to solve this in a one system, right? You only have Stanton. The best way to go about solving this is to create long-range scanning mechanics where you can probe out certain sites that generate or spawn based upon the probes or the object container going out there, finding it. Very similar to wormhole mechanics in EVE Online. This is one of the best ways to separate the PvE and PvP masses in one system. Also the best way to help propagate traffic and to make sure that people's experiences aren't a fucking unstable mess, because you've got people away from traffic, out there away from the population, and long-range scanning mechanics just make sense right now. To put long-range gameplay mechanics in this game makes 110% absolute sense for them to do, and seems like the easiest thing for them to do. Also adding another gameplay loop, helping with the peace between PvEers and PvPers, and cutting down on this need for them to feel like they need to make these big fucking events. I still want them to happen because I think it's kind of a neat thing to do. But let's maybe just limit them and give these people who are working on these things more time to devote towards more gameplay loops, more missions that make sense, and more rewards, boosting the rewards up as well. Can I get an amen to that? I think I'm making a lot of fucking sense. You're not gonna hate me. Put a 1 in the chat if you think that I'm actually making a lot of sense here, because I swear sometimes I wonder why I'm not running this shit. Just saying.
The mission feature team is always examining and reevaluating the global events that run throughout the year. Do they perform the way we intend they should? Not just in frame rate, but also in engagement, enjoyment, enchantment, entertainment. And if they're not, perhaps they need enhancement or extinguishment.
I've actually always been a Xeno Threat enjoyer. I think I've played it every time CIG has run the event. It's always had issues, but when it first arrived, it managed to bring players together to do something that was a bit different from everything else in the game. The cargo aspect was novel, and the big battles were a taste of what a lot of people want from Star Citizen, even if they were a slideshow. But the first problem with these bespoke larger missions that CIG has created is that they do tend to lose their sparkle when you play them over and over and over again. Yes, CIG have tweaked aspects this time around, but on the whole, it's the same thing, and in order for you to actually get to the major change, the boarding of the Idris, the whole event actually has to work. All of the missions in the game suffer.
And you won't have anything working in the terms of the PvE format and these missions, because you get a failure rate that's very high because of server issues, because of stability issues, period.
From this problem, really. Siege of Orison, Jumptown, even smaller examples like Wake of Disaster and Security Post-Korea, down to bunker missions and box deliveries. Once you've done these events a few times, they lose their shine. We've heard so many times over the years that missions in the game are meant to be modular, that they can be chained together and even spawned by player actions with counter missions, all run by this crazy system called Quantum.
And where are you, Tony? And where's the economic gameplay information? Let's talk about the economic gameplay.
In Tony Z's mind, the game of Tony Z's dreams, in theory, sounds great, but it does remain a dream, and probably for the long-term future.
I don't know. I think that possibly speaking, Quantum might be more filled out than people think that it is, and it's just waiting upon a dynamic server mesh that works. And once the dynamic server mesh is up and running, that possibly they can load the algorithm known as Quantum, that is this simulated demand or this simulated economy that's supposed to be representative of actual player demand, which I'm very skeptical of, rightly so, being a person that comes from an EVE Online trading industrial background and relies heavily and loves player-driven economies, even though that is the minority view. Because a lot of people will fight against that and say, well, there's so many different ways you can exploit a player-driven economy. The economy itself in real life is exploited. That's how people make profit. Welcome to the fucking market. Welcome to the game of the stock market, of crypto. Those exploitations... It's called profit, motherfuckers. If you're a trader, if you're somebody involved in the industry, you're laughing right now because you know it, because you understand player-driven dynamics, because you understand supply and demand. You laugh when you hear people talk about it this way, like, oh, sure, there has to be some policing. Absolutely. Not saying there doesn't need to be that. There needs to be some regulations about this shit. That's what the SEC is for, even though they're doing a horrible job at their job. Gensler is a fucking troll, man. He's terrible. The regulation happens, and it's just completely off the wall bonkers, okay? But we're not talking about that. The policing of an economy in the game can be easy. It can be done easily. What we're talking about is profit margin. And profit margin is dictated by the demand of the person on the other end. And relative to the area that they're in, that price will go up. If there is no supply, this is simple supply and demand 101. If there is no supply in an area, right, the demand will be very high and the price will be very high because there's no supply. And if you're making those goods and you have supply and you go out to those areas that might be dangerous, then guess what? You can set the fucking price because you're the only dude with the supply. That's how an economy works, motherfuckers. You know, that's why I always laugh when I hear these people and I start talking about these EVE Online analogies and they get so upset when I bring it up. And I guarantee you the people that are traders, the people that are into the industry, that know the gameplay, that love that gameplay, they're going to tell you the same thing that I'm telling you. I'm not saying anything that this is just basic 101 economy, man. Supply and demand is one of the simplest equations that there are, man. And I don't know if AI is going to be able to simulate it. I don't know if Quantum's going to be able to simulate it. I know that the best shot of it working is Tony, but where the fuck is Tony? And why aren't we having economic talks? And why aren't they letting us know where we're at with the economy? Is it locked and loaded? Is the economy waiting? Is Quantum waiting for dynamic server meshing? Is it not? Because we don't have an economy right now. We don't have a Star Citizen economy right now. We have an A to B fetch quest. You know, it's essentially what we have with minor game loops that are disjointed, like mining, okay? Salvaging. I mean, at least they're there. That's great. But they're all disjointed. They're all fractured. We got to make it seamless, right? And we need manufacturing and we need crafting. And it's very disjointed right now. And my whole thing is like, let's move here on this because those industrial players that a lot of people think is, oh, it's boring gameplay. Oh, fuck, who cares about this shit? Well, those people who play that way are the backbone of any MMO that has an economy. Those are important players. Those players make it so that there are dynamic events for the people who like to make things go boom. I appreciate both because I play both. When I'm not PvPing against people and making things go boom, I'm economic PvPing. and I'm trying to find ways I can make profit. It's fun for me. That's the way I like to play. I like to be an armchair warrior on an Excel sheet, and I like to be in a cockpit blowing shit up. That is literally the way I play any MMO. Those are my two. You ask me what my fun is in an MMO. It's not the PvE grind. I get if that's your thing, and you're like a solo player, you know, you're a space trucker, you want to be left alone. I get it. The whole reason why these talks are happening right now is because people want to be left alone. And I can understand that argument. I get that. People want to get into the mission. They want to get their armor reward, and they don't have to deal with people. Well, guess what? You're in an MMO, and you're in an MMO in an alpha state, and the developer is making an event because they feel it necessary to give those people content. And guess what? There's other players around them that are going to blow them up. Hello, you're in space. Hello, you're in an MMO. This shit's going to happen. And the security is not there as it's needed. And there's no multiple systems. You're only in one. You're in one sandbox, not in multiple ones right now. As things expand and security gets updated and AI gets updated, you will be at the point where you can feel safe and have that type of gameplay. But that gameplay is not now. And PvEers need to realize that are getting into Star Citizen. Period. Full stop.
It does remain a dream, and probably for the long-term future. How much time has gone into these broken dynamic global events that the mission team could have been using for more important things? I'm pretty sure the standard missions in the game could be in a lot better place if we never had Xenothreat, Siege, and dare I whisper it, Ninetales Lockdown.
We realized, like, there's no point maintaining this global event if no one plays it, you know?
But even if Star Citizen had overall more and better missions,
I mean, it's kind of a waste of time to me. They should be, like, to me, I appreciate the fact that they're doing this. I appreciate the fact that Cloud Imperium's making these events, okay? I get why they feel like they have to, because they feel like they got to feed content to people. They feel like they got to spoon feed these events to them. And sometimes they're fun, okay? But they are very disjointed because of where we're at in the development cycle. I would much rather them stop worrying about these large global events and much rather them focus on other game loops that can make this more dynamic. Again, like long-range scanning mechanics and game loops evolved with that. And going through these missions that currently exist and weeding out the bad actors and putting in better game design in the missions that currently exist and creating more contracts in the Moby-Glass, more missions, more reputation for PvEers that'll stick around and stick around for that content, where they can have more stable experiences, again, depending upon server-based issues and dynamic server meshing, right? But at least at this point where we're at, before dynamic server meshing hits and before that stability hits the way that we want it to hit, how about just looking at missions solo, like going through each fucking mission? First off, raising rewards up on everything, because most of the experiences in the contract manager and your mission, where you're accepting missions in your Moby-Glass, are borked. But let's take all that workload from these large events that take so much time and effort from the devs, from Cloud Imperium devs. How about we take all of that work and all that energy and pour it into the very lifeblood of the Moby-Glass mission contract area, where you can actually, or long-range scanning. Like, well, I don't know why this isn't common sense.
missions, CIG will never be able to give us enough custom-created theme park style content to keep players interested. We hear a lot about the fact that CIG have created this.
I love the comments in chat, because you guys are absolutely right. Nothing matters until servers work, says Backspace, right? That's Sketch says stability is unachievable while new code breaks old code, and the new code will not stop. And alpha is an alpha is an alpha. Wishing it wasn't won't change. Right, Sketch. Completely agree with you guys. Mad South says, yeah, nothing matters if the server foundation is not done.
Yes, you're not gonna hate me. Yes.
I've been preaching it. That's why I say on the priority list, dynamic server meshing is at the top of that pyramid of work. It is at the pinnacle. It is the most important thing. Everything hinges on it. Some people debate me on that, and I think to myself, why am I wasting my time debating with people that don't understand this? I can't tell you how many comments I've gotten in the YouTube comment section where people are telling me that that is wrong. They're telling me the dynamic server meshing is not one of the most important top tier game elements to be flushed out and fixed, and that it should not be at the top of the worry list. That's what they're telling me. They're telling me that in my YouTube comments. And it's beyond me. It's beyond me how people can't get that. Do you guys understand that? Maybe somebody can explain that to me. Maybe somebody's got some logical argument to tell me differently. I haven't heard a logical one yet. I feel like they're clueless as well, Mad Style. Red Bear says, don't worry about it. I'm not too worried about it, other than it just kind of like, you know, it's discombobulating, you know? It's like, what is going on?
This giant sandbox for us to create our own fun. But when it comes down to it, it's like we're sat in a giant sandbox with a single spade and nothing else. There is only your imagination, and that will only take you so far. We need sandcastle molds, we need stones, we need flags, we need more tools. Now, I'm fully aware that they're not the same team of people, but imagine if the dev effort and the money in salaries, etc., spent on Xenothreat and Siege over the years had been instead spent on building out the crafting and blueprint system that CIG.
Yes, sir! You're not gonna hit me!
Now I'm agreeing with you. Now I'm agreeing with him. See, that I do like TenPoundFortyTwo. Now he's hitting us with some logic. Exactly 10pound42.
are just now starting to develop. Would the whole game not be in a much better overall place?
They're catering, they're pandering to the masses that don't give a fuck. They're pandering to the people that are like, content, spoon feed me content. Like, they're pandering to the people that are the loudest, but they're not the majority. They're not the majority. The majority of people are the people like us that are exactly what TenPound42 is saying, exactly what I've been saying. Those are the majority of the people. This voice is not out there, though. Why aren't other content creators besides TenPound42 and I saying this shit? I'm glad that 10 Pound, God bless him. God bless you, dude. God bless you. Add another voice to this out there. Content creators, we need to be collective on this, and we need to get together and pound these war drums that we need more focus on this. On these core gameplay mechanics that still yet need to be flushed out and introduced, rather than pandering to the loudest people and creating these huge events that are all disjointed. Completely agree with them, by the way, on that they are disjointed. But again, that's where we're at in this development cycle. That's what's happening right now. That's just factual.
Imagine we had thousands of blueprints for items, ships parts, building components, and even space station components. Imagine if that system was already in game now, ready for server meshing and ready for player-made and player-owned base building.
Yep.
Yes, let's come back to reality. But until there is territory to own, build on, and defend, there are no real long-term goals in the game. Or how about the reputation system? The mission team do actually own the rep system now. So is it fair to say now that the extended time spent on getting Xenothreat working will have affected the work on the reputation system for 4.0? Since Rich Tyra has taken over as the boss of the PU, there seems to have been a push to form StarCitizen into a real game, 1.0. I would ask him if dynamic events are really worth the dev effort until after 1.0. We were supposed to have a new event, a new version of Ninetales Lockdown, Blockade Runner, and that seems to have gone missing, and I actually do hope that they've canned it for now. Bring it back once server meshing is working well and performance is decent, otherwise I predict just another broken slideshow. And we've not even mentioned performance yet. Even on a very high-end system, good chunks of this mission have been sub 30 FPS. I dread to think how this will perform on some lower-end systems. For someone new to the game, surely the performance combined with the bugs of the mission leave a seriously bad taste in the mouth, even if the concept of the mission overall is cool. For now at least, CIG seems to be committed to these events. Why? Well, I can think of three main reasons. Number one, they clearly believe in the concept of these large missions that bring players together. And in theory, all of these missions, if they work properly, they would probably be fun enough to grind out if there was a decent enough reward at the end. Overdrive proved that a large part of the player base just want a decent reward as a light at the end of the tunnel. And these events are at least different from the everyday experience of StarCitizen. In the long-term future, the idea of the Vandal invading a system like Xenothreat do here, causing havoc, completely disrupting the economy and forcing players to band together to clear them out sounds like fun. move that event around the galaxy, reward players for participating. It'll work well. And I'm sure CIG will get more creative than that. But I think you can see that these sorts of global events probably do have a place in the game in the long term. The second reason why I think CIG are probably continuing with these events is that I assume working on these events has actually been useful for development.
That's true. That's true. That's a good point. You know, working on these events have helped them in other areas of development. That's for sure.
In the same way that for a child at school, learning basic maths concepts then allows them to go on and learn more complicated things.
It's like training for the developers that are currently working on it. So like the people that are developing this are all gaining the benefit in terms of their experience in developing these for future events and for future missions. So within the confines of the technology that's currently existing. So yes. In essence, it's leveling up the developers that are working with Cloud Imperium by doing this work. So it's not all a waste.
I think we have to assume that the work CIG has done on Xenothreat and Siege has improved the skills of the devs and actually will help in the future. Now, there is a chance that that isn't true at all, and these have just been a painful time sink for the dev teams. And another counter to this would be that surely all this time...
Yeah, I don't think people are debating that. Daft is saying acting like Xeno is taking away development is odd. It's made already, not like people are working on it now currently, right? In the present tense form. Yeah, I think what we're referring to, Daft, is like future other quote unquote Xeno-like events that will be made because they're trying to spoon feed the masses and the loudest people that aren't the majority of citizens. I think that's more the argument that's being made here, Daft.
An effort that they put into Xenothreat this time round. Are they going to have to rework most of it once server meshing comes in? Surely the long-term future of this event is that it runs on its own server with massively improved server performance.
Yeah, I disagree with his overall point. I think there should still be... Listen, it comes down to this. You can't help. You can't help the environment that you're creating when you're putting these dynamic events into the game. They can be exciting, right? You can't help the fact that PvEers and PvPers are going to be fighting and at each other's throats. By taking out this, it might help it, but it's not going to be the overall solution. The overall solution is game design. The overall solution is creating another system that's an outlaw-based system and having Stanton that's a lawful-based system, and then experimenting with the balance between the PvP and the PvE base between two systems. Then we can have a deeper talk. Then we can have a deeper discussion on the matter. But until that happens, and they're going to keep creating these events. You know that's just going to keep happening.
And the third reason why CIG are probably still doing these events, and probably the big one, is going to be our favourite marketing. For a while now, CIG has been using these events to sell ships. We get these pages with each event that suggests ships that would be helpful to complete it. And actually, you could argue that the main reason that CIG actually pushed this Xenothreat live in such a bad state was that they just had to finish off this whole Overdrive mission chain, which is just one big marketing campaign for the Hornet Mark II. CIG will have data about new players joining in these events, people buying ships and player participation. I assume at the very least, Xenothreat does bump up player concurrency numbers, although that actually hasn't been that evident on the servers I've been on. If they continue to run them, it's probably for good reason. And I personally don't get too upset about CIG's marketing tactics. It's a necessary evil and has been crucial to get the game to where it is now. So while we might be frustrated that Overdrive and Xenothreat appear to have been driven by the need to market the Hornet, I think we have to let CIG. Whether you like these reasons or not, if I was in charge, we wouldn't see Siege of Orison or Xenothreat again until 1.0. Give us more gameplay, bring in more star systems, give us long-term goals, give us server meshing in a working place. Make sure you don't have to rework these events over and over again. If these events performed well and they weren't so buggy, I think they'd probably be a net positive for the game right now, but they don't. As they stand, the damage they do to Star Citizen's reputation, combined with the amount of dev effort, means they can't be worth it, surely.
Hold on, everybody. Okay, there's TenPoundFortyTwo. I'll put the links down in the description below for those that want to watch it on YouTube. And let's get back to the show here. Hi, everyone. My son has a bag filled with pork here. I'm just checking to see if it's okay live. I'm just checking to see. Okay, let's see if this is good. Let's see if this is good. Oh, yeah, that's good, dude.